How do we as a culture, no, I love that. And I hope our listeners are celebrating the goodness of the body. And I love in the book how you draw the thread between that doctrine of the integrity of body and soul, the inherent goodness and dignity of the human person, which includes the body, and the way that changes how we might think about abortion or euthanasia or homosexuality or transgenderism. I guess in some ways it feels like the goodness of the body is up against the goodness of the individual's will and choice and self-assertion. That's what a lot of these debates feel like. The goodness of the mother's autonomy and choice and agency over her own body trumps whatever goodness and integrity and dignity this body of the baby or the fetus might have. The goodness of you identifying with some other part, your soul telling you something else about yourself that your body is out of joint with as a transgender person. How did we get there? Like, put on your Francis Schaeffer kind of cultural apologetics app. How do we get to the point where the will and choice and self-assertion trumps the goodness or the inherent dignity of the body itself?
Postmodernism. Postmodernism.
Does that question make sense?
Oh, yeah. Well, let me answer. There's two ways to answer that. Let me answer the easier one first.
Okay.
We need to be reading what the secular people say. If we want to have an effective communication to the secular world, we need to read what they're saying. What are they saying about abortion? Basically, the two-story mentality, the body versus the person, plays in this way. The secular bioethicist agrees today that the fetus is human from conception. The evidence from DNA, from genetics is just too strong to deny it. Just read any embryology textbook. So if you read the secular bioethicists, they agree life begins at conception. So how do they get around that to affirm abortion? Well, what they say is, well, the fetus is human up until a certain point, and then, and so it's basically in the lower story, right? What we know by science, what we know by genetics, by biology, the fetus is human. But then somehow it jumps into the upper story and becomes a person. And the person is usually defined in terms of cognitive abilities, mental abilities, so some sort of level of cognitive functioning, self-awareness, and so on. And so there's the two-story divide. Is that if you can be human at one point but not a person until sometime later, then clearly these are two different things. And so what the bioethicist says today is, as long as the fetus is merely human, human, it has no value, dignity, or significance, and certainly does not warrant legal protection. It can be killed for any reason or no reason. It can be tinkered with genetically. You can do scientific experiments on it. You can pick through for sellable body parts, as Planned Parenthood does, and then toss it out with the other medical waste. And that is how medical journals describe the fetus, as medical waste. So who has a low view of the body here? What they are really saying is merely being human is not enough for human rights. Because they are acknowledging that the fetus is human and then saying it has no rights. So this is a huge change in people's understanding of human rights. You can be human and not have human rights. And of course, euthanasia is the same reasoning, but backwards. If you lose a certain level of cognitive functioning, the upper story, you exist only in the lower story. In fact, you'll find bioethicists who'll say, if you lose a certain level of cognitive functioning, you are only a body. Only a body. And at that stage, your food and water can be withheld, your treatment can be stopped, you can be unplugged, your organs can be harvested. And so once again, they're not denying that this person is still human. You didn't become an alien species, but you have no human rights. If you lose a certain level of the upper story and you exist only in the lower story, you no longer have human rights. So this is huge.
Right.
We still think we have human rights just because we're human. But since 1973, which was Roe v. Wade abortion decision, we do not have human rights just because we're human.